The exercise files for today's course are located in the video description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hello everyone, I am Trish Connor-Cato. Welcome to Tableau video training course. Tableau is a visual analytics platform that makes it easier for people to explore and manage data, and faster to discover and share insights that can change businesses and the world. It helps people and organizations be more data-driven. Tableau supports data prep, analysis, governance, collaboration, and more. As a continuation of the Tableau Introduction video training course, this advanced course is designed to boost the students' competence when it comes to creating visualizations and creating dashboards. The course goes into considerable detail on these two subjects and explores, among other areas, how to create a range of different charts, maps, user-defined fields, as well as a host of advanced features and abilities. We'll start by connecting to a variety of data sources. This will leave you with some great workbooks to practice on and develop on your own after this course. Then we'll move into creating a wide variety of charts, including bivariate, multivariate, and maps. In Module 3, we're going to focus on creating bivariate charts. We have 6 lessons in this module. We're going to start by creating a bivariate table, and then we're going to move on to creating scatter plots. You're going to learn how to swap rows and columns in visualizations, and also how to add trend lines. You'll learn about selecting color palettes and effective ways of using dates. Bivariate analysis means analyzing and exploring 2 variables at a time, and common types would be tables and scatter plots. So I've mentioned that tables are great as a supplemental viz. Scatter plots give an option to display a lot of data in a small area with relatively low confusion rates. So it's typically used to determine whether 2 measures are correlated. And because we're going to be adding trend lines in this module, I have a follow-up slide for you here giving you the 5 types of trend lines that you can use in Tableau. So back in Tableau, I'm going to use my tab scrolling arrows, which I'm pointing to on the screen, just like in Excel. I'm going to use those to go backwards until I find the sheet that we named Average Sales by Market Segment. So I'm going to just use the second scrolling arrow there. And I've located the sheet Average Sales by Market Segment. This is where we did our univariate table. And we want to make a copy of this sheet. So there's a couple of ways of doing it. I'm going to just hold down my Control key, click and hold on the Sheet tab, and you'll notice that my mouse pointer has a plus sign underneath it. And on the left side, you'll see a downward pointing arrow. I'm going to drag to the right, all the way to the right as far as I can go, and let it go. And now I have to scroll to the last sheet on the left, and I can continue dragging that sheet without holding Control. I'm going to continue dragging that sheet so it's at the very end after our top 10 products by sales value. So we have a copy of that sheet, which is indicated, and you'll see the number 2. And again, the sheet tab name is showing as the title on the sheet. So we'll fix that when we're done creating this particular table. So all we have to do here on our copy is go ahead and add the sales measure to columns. So of course it changes it into a bar chart. We're going to use Show Me, and we're going to select the text table, which is the first one on the Show Me list. So now you have a table that's showing the average sales and the sum of sales. And notice how it put measure names in columns, and they're showing the measure values at the bottom of the marks card. You have that little drop down, and then it shows that both measures were put in the text box here. And so now you have a bivariate table. And we're going to name the sheet average and total sales by market segment and get rid of the 2, indicating that it's a copy. And as usual, after you've renamed it, go ahead and save your file. Now we're going to create a scatter plot. So let's go ahead and bring up a new sheet. And we're going to just put profit in columns and sales in rows for this one. So this is not useful at all, right? Just looking at the one little circle on this. Let's go to add more information. So let's put category in color and region in detail on the marks card. Region and detail. So we have our legend on the right showing our colorations there. If we hover over any of the circles, you'll see the category, the region, the profit, and the sales. But this is not a scatter plot quite yet. Let's go to our Show Me panel. And on the Show Me panel, you're going to select the scatter plot. It's the one that has the pluses and the circles on it. And notice at the bottom, as I'm always pointing out, for scatter plots, you need 0 or more dimensions and 2 to 4 measures. So we have 2 measures on this, which is why it's eligible. I'm going to go ahead and select that. So this is giving you the ability to visualize the relationships between numerical variables. Let's collapse our Show Me panel. And you'll see now that you have a legend showing the different shapes that are being used for the different categories, right? So the circle is now representing furniture, the square is office supplies, and the plus sign is technology. That is a scatter plot. Let's go ahead and name this sheet Sum and Profit by Category and Region. And then save. Now, Tableau gives you the ability to swap rows and columns in a visualization, which is really cool. And so I already have a new sheet up. Let's go ahead and put subcategory in columns, category in rows, and drag quantity to the text box on the marks card. So it gives us a table, right? And we use that text field on the marks card. And that's cool, but the point of this one is showing how to swap. But before I do that, my OCD will not allow me to ignore the column widths here. So I just needed to fix that so I can see all of the column names clearly, the column headings clearly, as opposed to them being truncated. So now that I have that going, how do you swap? Well, there's a shortcut key for it. You do Control W, and now you can see that the category is in columns and subcategory is in rows. So it depends on how you want to see the data. This gives you the flexibility to look at it a couple of different ways without you having to drag the fields around. And you can do Control W to swap it back again. So we're going to go ahead and name this sheet quantity by subcategory and category. And I'm just going to abbreviate quantity, QTY, by subcategory and category. I really do know how to type most days. So Control W is your swapping mechanism. And if you were to forget the shortcut key Control W, you can go to the Analysis menu, and Swap Rows and Columns is the last choice on that menu. Go ahead and bring up a new sheet, and we're going to create a visualization, and we're going to add trend lines to it. Now, if you go to add trend lines and it doesn't allow you to do so, it's because you need to have some kind of numerical field on each axis in the visualization. So either a date or a measure. That's the only way it'll allow you to add trend lines. So let's go ahead and put our sales measure in rows. And we'll use the year of the order date in columns for this one. So we have a date, numeric, and we have a measure, numeric. So each axis has a numeric value on it. And so it gave us a line chart. Let's go to Show Me, and let's choose the horizontal bar chart for this one. And I'm going to collapse Show Me, and I'm going to change it from standard to entire view just to make it larger. And I decide I don't need this year of order date title at the top. So I'm going to right click on it, year of order date. It's kind of cut off. And I'm going to hide field labels for rows. It's obvious those are the years. And so how do we add the trend line? Well, there's a couple of ways, but let's do it this way. On the left side, you're on your data tab in the field list, right? Up top, there's another tab called Analytics. We're going to go there. And under Model, you will see Trend Line. Now, when you start to drag it and drop it on your visualization, that's where you get to pick the type of trend line that you want. So we're going to drop it on linear. And it adds the line to the visualization. Now, if you hover over the line, you'll see it has a tooltip of its own where it's giving you the calculation for sales and the year of the order date and the R squared value and P value. And you can also get additional information for your trend line by going to the Analysis menu, hovering over trend lines, hovering over trend lines, and then selecting Describe Trend Model. And so it gives you this whole dialogue of information, the model formula, the number of modeled observations, all of the stuff that you may or may not need, and you can scroll across and see more values. And you can even copy that information and paste it somewhere else as necessary. So I'm going to close Describe Trend Model dialog, and I'm going to go ahead and let's just call this sales trend by year. That would make sense for a name. And save your file as usual. Now let's say we selected the linear trend line and we really want an exponential trend line. Well, this is an easy fix. We can go back to the Analytics tab and we can drag trend line over again, and this time drop it onto exponential. And notice the shape of that trend line changed a little bit, right? So you can easily swap it by doing that. Now, at some point, you might decide you don't want to show the trend line anymore, and I'm actually going to swap it back to linear. And for that, you can go to the Analysis menu, hover over Trend Lines, and uncheck Show Trend Lines, so it disappears off of your visualization. If I go back to Analysis and hover over Trend Lines and click on Show Trend Lines again, it will reappear. Go ahead and locate, using your scrolling arrows, the total sales by market segment pie chart sheet. So this is going to show you how to select color palettes and assign colors to the slices in this pie. So the reason why the pie slices are colored by market segment is because we had dragged market segment to the color box on the marks card. And it just assigns it default colorations. We want to change that. So we are going to click on the color box on the marks card and choose Edit Colors. And notice on the left, it shows you the colors that it automatically assigned to each market segment. And on the right, under Select Color Palette, it says Automatic. We're going to do the drop-down arrow there. You can see that Tableau has a host of color palettes available for you to use. And I'm going to choose one called Traffic Light. So now you see the colors that are available in the Traffic Light color palette. And so I'm going to just move it off of my pie chart a little bit. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to assign the colors from this palette to each market segment. So on the left, I'm going to click on Consumer, and that has the largest slice. So I'm going to give it a green color. So I click on the green color underneath our Traffic Light palette. And then I'm going to select Corporate. And Corporate looks like it has the lowest amount. So I'm going to give that a deep red color. And then for Home Office, I'm going to do yellow. And now I can apply on the bottom right, and you'll see the changes take place. So if you'd like to use a different palette, go ahead and select a different palette on your own, and then assign the colors to each market segment like we just did and apply it. So I did the same as you. I switched my palette and I switched my colors, and you can see my end result for this. And save. I've navigated back to my quantity by subcategory and category sheet. This is the one we did the swap on. I'm actually we're going to use this for something else. I'm just going to expand my column headings a little bit so they're not cut off. So this portion is using dates, right? So we don't have any dates on this sheet, but we want to see varieties of the order date on here. So what we're going to do is go ahead and drag order date up to columns and drop it before subcategory. So it's the year of the order date. And then what we're going to do is, you notice there's a plus sign in front of year. Click on the plus sign, and it gives you the pill for the quarter of the order date. So now we see year and quarter. Go ahead and do the plus sign in front of quarter, and you get month, and so on and so forth. So you can add the same date field multiple times and show a variety of dates. I think that what I want to do is make this look a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag subcategory in front of year of order date in the columns row, and it makes it a little bit more readable. So I'm seeing the year, and then under each year, I'm seeing the quarter, and then under each quarter, I'm seeing the month. And this is showing furniture and office supplies don't look like they had anything going on in terms of quantities for 2019 and 2020. If I scroll over to the right a little bit in my visualization, I can see that it's not, well, yeah, there's 2019 for office supplies it's coming in. So we're starting to see the data as we scroll to the right. But you can use, and that's a nice way of doing it. If I do the minus sign in front of year order date, it collapses everything because all of the other date breakdowns are underneath year. So I would have to do the plus sign on that one, plus sign on quarter again, in order to be able to see the quarter and the month. Now, if I do the plus sign on month, it's going to show the day, but I don't want that level of detail. So I'm going to collapse. I'm going to do the minus sign on month to get rid of day. You can go ahead and save your file. Compared to our first two modules, Module 3 was fairly simple to get through. We covered creating bivariate charts. So we did a bivariate table. Again, a table on a dashboard would be used as a supplement to another visualization. And then you learned how to create scatter plots. You learned the shortcut key as well as where it resides on the menu to swap your rows and columns in a visualization. You also learned how to add trend lines, and remember the 5 different types of trend lines. There are descriptions of them in the slide deck, which is also in the video description for your future reference. You also learned how to hide the trend lines and how to change them. Then we got to select the color palette for our pre-existing pie chart, and you learned how to assign the colors to each slice of the pie. And you got to do that with me and on your own. And then you learned how to add different levels of the date to a visualization. In our fourth module, we'll switch our focus to creating multivariate charts. This module has 6 lessons. We're going to start by creating facets and then move on to creating area charts and then bullet graphs. You're going to learn how to create dual axes charts, how to create Gantt charts, and how to create heat maps in this module. Multivariate simply means analyzing and exploring more than 2 variables at a time. And I have the common types, which are our lessons, listed on this slide. So facets are effective at comparing categories within a single measure. It especially is effective when you have data that can be split into multiple categories. And the bars will display side by side. You also have heard of facets referred to as small multiples. So that's what a facet is in Tableau. Area charts are powerful for adding detail to other visualizations, but they're not as effective on their own. They're kind of like supplemental, like a table. Bullet graphs show where your data is clustered and can compare categories. Gantt charts connect several distinct data points, presenting them as one continuous evolution. It's a simple, straightforward way to visualize changes in one value relative to another. And then we have heat maps, also known as density maps. They can be used when you want to show a trend for visual clusters of data. For example, which areas of Manhattan have the most taxi pickups? That would be an example of something that you might want to show on a heat map. And now we're going to create a facet or small multiples visualization. I'm on the last sheet in the workbook, and I'm going to do my new sheet button to get a brand new sheet to build this on. And on this sheet, we're going to drag subcategory to columns. And we're going to drag both sales and then profit to rows. So now that we've done that, we have multiples. We have within the same visualization, we have sales and we have profits. And notice that both of them show up on the marks card saying that both of them are using the automatic mark, which is the column in this particular instance. Now I'm using control drag. I'm going to hold down control, click and hold on profit in the rows shelf, and drag it to color on the marks card. So made a copy of it. So both facets are going to have the color, but the legend over on the right is going to be for profit because that's the facet that we put on the color card. So then we want to change the colors. You can do it a couple of different ways. I'll show you both ways. We can click on color in the marks card, choose edit. And then for the palette that says automatic, we're going to drop down and we're going to choose red, green, diverging. And we're going to click apply. So you see that the colors are going to apply to everything in the visualization, but the legend is just showing for profit. We're going to click OK. Now, another way you can change the colors or make other settings changes regarding them is from the legend. Go to the drop down next to the legend and you can go into edit colors and you'll see the same box as when we clicked on color in the marks card, and we can cancel that. Just wanted to show you the other way of doing it. Now we're going to create another facet by adding the quantity field to rows. So now we have another section in our visualization: sales, profit, and quantity. Now, if we sort any of these facets, it's going to cause the other ones to sort because they're arranged by subcategory, right? So we're going to go to the y-axis on profit, where it says profit, and we want to sort it. And so from lowest to highest, I clicked it twice, the sort icon. So we see the negative profit at the beginning of its facet. And then we're going to go ahead, just to be able to do a little bit more analysis on this, we're going to grab the category field and add it to column shelf before subcategory. So now you have your categories, right? And your subcategories are showing at the bottom. So we can see the way that we have it sorted from lowest to highest, especially particularly if you look at the profit facet, you'll see that furniture is where most of the negative profit is. And then office supplies has a little bit of negative profit as well. And we're going to name this sheet. And it's going to be sales, profit, and I'm going to use QTY for quantity, by category and subcategory. And as usual, save. Now we're ready to create our area chart. An area chart is really a line chart with the area filled in. And again, it's a useful companion visualization for another visualization. So let's go ahead and bring up a new sheet for this. And on this sheet, in the field list, we're going to use Control-Click, and we're going to select ship date and profit, and then expand your Show Me. And in the Show Me pane, you're going to select the area chart. And so you have I'll show you. I'll point to it here for you. This is the area chart that we want to select. So when you go ahead and click on it, so another way, this is a different way of doing things. We selected the fields that we wanted, and then we selected the visualization type, and it placed those fields on the column and the rows shelf for us and built the area chart. And by the way, if you look at the bottom when you have your area chart selected, you need one date, 0 or more dimensions, and 1 measure in order to be able to use that type of chart. I'm going to go ahead and collapse Show Me. So you notice this is really a line chart with the area filled in. We're going to give it some more context. So let's drag category to color on the marks card. And now you'll see it's split up by different categories. The blue one, you can see the legend on the right, is furniture, orange is office supplies, and that palish pink or rose color is technology. So we're giving it more depth. And for the ship date, we want to change it to quarter. So I'm going to do the drop down there next to year of ship date in the columns shelf. And I want to select the quarter with the year after it. Now, is there another way I could have done that? I could have done the plus sign in front of year. So now we're seeing it by quarter. We're giving it more depth. And we also want to see some profit in here. So we're going to use profit as a label. So drag profit to the label box on the marks card. And now you're seeing the labels on this area chart. Now notice in the marks card at the top where it typically says automatic, it now says area. We can go to the drop down there and choose line, and it changes it to a line chart. We're going to go back to the drop down and change it back to area. So area charts are really line charts with the area filled in. And go ahead and name the sheet Profit by Category. So again, an area chart is good, similar to a table, as a companion chart for another visualization on a dashboard. So I've saved my file and I have a new sheet ready to go where we're going to create a bullet graph. So let's go ahead and drag sales and profit to columns for this one. Sales and profit to columns, and we'll drag subcategory to rows. And now let's use our Show Me panel to select the bullet graph. And the bullet graph is the center one in the bottom row. I'm pointing to it now. And when you hover over it, you'll see that you need 0 or more dimensions, 2 measures, and then it says right-click the continuous axis to swap reference lines, and you'll see what that means in just a moment. Go ahead and select your bullet graph, and then go up to the toolbar and change it from standard to entire view. And I'm going to collapse my Show Me panel. So how do I read this? Let's start with the vertical lines that you're seeing on your bullet graph. When you hover over a vertical line, it's going to show you the average sales value for that particular subcategory. Now, to the left of that, you'll see a shaded gray area. And that shaded area, if you hover over any of the shaded gray areas, this one I'm seeing 60% of average sales value. So it gives you these markers along the way, right? There's 60%. Another one 60%. So the shading matters here, right? So you can see the average sales value, 60 and 80% of the average sales value. Here's another one for art. Here's the 60% of average sales. And then to the right of that vertical white line that's coming down, it's showing 80% of the average sales. For appliances, it would do the same, 60 and 80, depending on what side of that white line you're on, and then the average sales. So let's see what happens when we swap the reference lines. We're going to right-click on the profit axis, and we're going to choose Swap Reference Line Fields. And so the whole thing looks a little bit different now. When you hover over one of those vertical lines, you're getting the average profit again. So that is the same. And then you have your shaded areas that you can get to and see your 60 or 80%. So it just swapped the reference lines, and we can swap them back. So notice when we swapped it, now at the bottom it's saying sales, right? We're going to swap it back. So by right-clicking on the sales axis, swap reference line fields, and now it's back to profit. So it's kind of similar to swapping rows and columns, but different. And that is a bullet graph. Now, the only other thing we want to do is let's go to color and choose an orange color for this. And then we're going to go ahead and name our sheet. Let's see. We're going to name our sheet for this one. It really is sales and profits by subcategory. So we can, we'll name it sales and profit. By subcategory. And save. We saw an example of a dual axes chart in an earlier module when we created the double line chart, right? And so it had a dual axes by default when we did that. Now I'm going to show you how to create one using a slightly different method. So let's go ahead and drag order date to columns and sales to rows. And we also want to include quantity in here, but the quantity values are really different than the sales values. So what we're going to do is we're going to click and hold on the quantity field, drag it onto our visualization and over to the right until you see a dashed black line, and then let it go. It automatically creates the dual axes double line chart, right? Dual line chart. And so we can still have a dual axes chart without it being a dual line chart. I'm going to go to show me. I'm going to use the horizontal bar chart for this one. And notice it gets rid of, so it separated the two of them. Well, how can I fix this? I'm going to get rid of the sum of quantity from columns. I'm going to just click on it and press delete. And then I'm going to drag quantity onto the visualization. Oops, before I do that, let me collapse show me. I'm going to drag quantity onto the visualization all the way over until I see a dashed line. And so I still retain my bar, but I have a dual axes going on this chart. So by dragging it over until you see the dashed line, that will automatically create a dual axes chart for you. And then we don't want to see it by year of order date. We want to see by quarter of order date. So I'm going to do the plus sign in front of year, and it's showing the year and the quarter. And then I'm going to delete the year pill from the rows shelf. So now I'm just seeing the information by quarter of order date. And we can go ahead and name this sheet sales and quantity by quarter. And you can save. Now we're going to create a Gantt chart. And remember, that's a straightforward way to visualize changes in one value relative to another. So let's go ahead and bring up a new sheet. And for this one, we're going to drag order date to columns. And we're going to do the drop down arrow to the right side of that year order date pill. And we're going to hover over more and select week number. So you'll see the week numbers of the order date. And let's grab subcategory and ship mode and put them both in rows. Subcategory and ship mode. Now we're not done with the fields we're going to have that we're going to be using here, but let's go ahead and go to our show me. And your Gantt chart is the first one in the bottom row. Notice it requires one date, one or more dimensions, and 0 to 2 measures. We're going to go ahead and select it. And now what we're going to do next is we want to size the marks on the Gantt chart according to the length of interval between the order date and ship date fields. And we're going to do that by creating a calculated field. So we're going to go up to the analysis menu and we're going to choose create calculated field. And the first thing we're going to do is name this calculation. So we're going to name it days to ship. And then we're going to click in the box. And we're going to use a diff function here. So I'm going to start typing date. And when it shows up on the list, I stop typing. I use my arrow key to highlight it, or I double click it so I can avoid typos. If I highlight it, I can tab it in, or you can double click it. Now, of course, at the bottom, it says the calculation contains errors because we haven't finished it. It's showing you the syntax of the date diff function right underneath where we're going to put the function. So right now it's looking for the date part argument. So we want to see the difference between order date and ship date in days. And then it has an argument of start date and another one of end date. So we're going to build that up now. So it's inside the parentheses after date diff. And we're going to start typing day, or the letter D. I see day on the list, so I'm going to dump it in. Oops. And actually backspace. I made a huge mistake there. We don't want to use the day function here. We want to tell it the date part of day. So for that, I'm going to type a single quote, the word day, and then close the single quote and type a comma. So now it's ready for the start date. For the start date, you're going to start typing order, and you'll see order date on the list, and you can double click it or tab it in. After order date, you're going to do, and you're outside the closing bracket on the order date, you're going to type a comma, and then you're going to start typing ship, so you get ship date in. So we want the difference in days between the order date and the ship date. And the only thing we have to do is type a closing parentheses after ship date. And down at the bottom, it lets us know that our calculation is valid. And we're going to click OK. So now in our field list, we have our days to ship calculated field. And we want our Gantt chart marks to be sized according to the days to ship. So we're going to drag our days to ship field onto size on the marks card. And you can see how it's showing different sizes. We have a legend over here because the subcategory is now in color. All right. So our sizes of the marks are based on the days to ship. If you hover over standard class, the bottom standard class one, the blue one, right? You'll see that it's in the accessories subcategory. It gives you the week of the order date and then 86 days to ship. If we look at the next one to the right, that one has 206 days to ship in this one, depending on the category. We're going to change this a little bit. We don't want the sum of the days to ship. We want to see the average days to ship. So on the marks card, I'm going to do the sum of days to ship drop down, hover over measure, and choose average. So this chart is kind of overwhelming right now, so we're going to apply a filter so it'll make more sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold down our control key, and in the column shelf, we're going to click and hold on the week of order date and drag it to the filter shelf. And we're going to select range of dates and next. We're going to put in January 1st, 2021 for the first date. Get in there. And we'll do December 31st, 2021 for the second date. And we will apply the filter and click OK. So it's doing it by the week of the order date, but it has a range of dates. So it's not all 4 or 5 years of the data that we have in here. And so when we hover over any of the marks on the Gantt chart, you'll see the ship mode, the subcategory, the week of the order date, and the average days to ship. And let's drag ship mode to color on the marks card. So now we get, it looks a little bit better, right? First class, right? Average days to ship is changing depending on the week of the order date. We're seeing second class. It looks like same day, which makes sense because they have the least amount of days to ship. Although there's one same day in there, it took one. Most of them are zeros for days to ship. For second class, depending on the week, we're seeing some 4s, 5s, 3s, so on and so forth. And that is a Gantt chart in Tableau. Now, to give the end user some more flexibility, we're going to show the order date filter so they can look at different date ranges. So I'm going to right click on order date in the filter shelf, and I'm going to choose show filter. So it shows up over on the right, and it shows up as like a sliding bar, right? So your end users can go ahead and drag for different ranges of dates, or we could do the drop down arrow next to it, right? And we could change it to relative date, start date, end date, browse periods. We're going to leave it on range of dates with the slider. And we're going to name this sheet days to ship. Before we actually name it, let's drag subcategory to detail on the marks card. And now we can name it days to ship by subcategory and ship mode. And save. So I'm all set up on a new sheet so we can create our heat map. Heat maps are also known as density maps. So let's start by dragging profit to columns and changing it to average from sum. We're going to drag sales to rows and also change it to average from sum. So we have our average profit, our average sales. And we're going to drag state province to detail on the marks card. So now in the marks card, we're going to go to our marks drop down where it says automatic. And we're going to select density at the bottom. And so it gives you a heat map of sorts. Now, the other thing I want to point out here is if I go to the Show Me pane and I select heat maps, it's the second one on the top, it makes it look more like a table with the stuff in there. So I'm going to do Control Z, which is undo. I want it to look like this, where you're actually seeing by the shape the density. So if I hover over one that's dense, it's showing me the average profit and average sales for Ontario. Looks like in Canada that has a lot more density. New Hampshire, you'll see the ones with the darker circles are kind of like the denser ones, it looks like. So let's go to color on the marks card and do the drop down next to automatic. And we're going to select one of the density color grids that they have there. We're going to do density multicolor light. And so you can see it looks more like a traditional heat map when you're doing it that way by using the density colors. Let's change the intensity to 85% for that. Ooh, so now you can really see the more dense areas. And to make it really stand out, we're going to do something here. Right-click anywhere on your visualization and choose Format. And the Format pane opens on the left side of your screen where your field list is normally. Underneath where it says Format Font, you'll see a series of icons. We want to select the paint bucket, which is for shading. And for our worksheet, where it says under default, for our worksheet, we're going to make it black. So the colors really pop there. And then underneath where it says Format Shading, we're going to go to the lines icon. And for grid lines, we're going to do the drop down and select None. So we're getting rid of the grid lines, which makes it look more like a heat map. So you can close that format pane. There's an X to the right of format lines, and it brings you back to your data and or analytics pane. And so you have an example of a heat map there. We're going to go ahead and name this sheet Average Sales and Profit by State Province. And save. So since we changed our worksheet shading to black, we can go ahead and we can't really see the title of the worksheet or the axis titles. So we're going to fix that. I'm going to start by right-clicking on the title of the worksheet up top and choosing Format Title. And on the Format pane on the left, I'm going to change the shading to white, just so it can be visible. And then I'm going to right-click on the average sales y-axis and choose Format. And I'm going to change that shading to white as well. And I'm going to do the same thing for your x-axis at the bottom. You'll learn more about formatting later in the course, but for right now, just so those are visible, we'll do it that way. And go ahead and save again. In Module 4, we created several multivariate charts. We started by creating facets, also known as small multiples, where we ended up having sales, profit, and quantity by subcategory in our small multiples graphs. Then we moved on to creating an area chart, which is a great supplemental chart to another chart on a dashboard. And it really is just a line chart with the area filled in. So you were shown how to do that. And then we added a field to create colors on the area chart, and we had them colored by category. We moved on to creating a bullet graph, and you learned how to create the bullet graph from Show Me, but you also learned how to review it and how to swap reference lines back and forth. In the fourth lesson, you learned how to create a dual axes chart by dragging a secondary measure to the border of the chart, existing chart or visualization, until you see the dashed black line. So when you're using measures that have disparate value ranges, you would want a dual axis chart for clarity. We moved in to creating our Gantt chart, right? And you learned how to do a calculated field during that lesson, where we used the date diff function to calculate the days between the order date and ship date. We also filtered the Gantt chart so it's more readable, and we showed the filter on the page so end users have the chance to select different date ranges. And lastly, we created our heat map. We did it not by using Show Me, but by using the density mark in the marks card. We added color to our density by using one of the colors that are built, the density palettes that were built in. And we changed the background of the sheet to black so that the heat map actually pops visually. We got rid of the grid lines to make it more clear. And then, as usual, we saved it after giving the sheet a name. Our fifth module is all about creating maps. So in the first lesson, you're going to learn how to create geographic roles. We already have our geographic roles created, but I'll review where you would go to create them if they weren't created. In the second lesson, you'll learn how to place marks on a map. Then we'll move on to overlaying demographic data. In the fourth lesson, you'll learn how to create a Choropleth map, which just simply means a filled map. In lesson 5, you're going to learn how to use Polygon Shapes on a map, and we'll do some further customization of maps to end this module. So as I mentioned, a Choropleth map is known as a filled map, and they're great for showing ratio data. So I have an example here that says if you want to see obesity rates for every county across the US, you could use this type of map to spot any spatial trends. I already have my new sheet ready for us to create maps on, but what I want to do first is go to the data source view so that we could take a look at where you would assign geographic roles to fields if necessary. So in your metadata grid, go ahead and click on the globe icon in the type column for city and hover over geographic role. So these roles have already been assigned, right? You notice that city is assigned the geographic role of city. If you look at the globe and the geographic role for state province, you see that it's already assigned. Now, it's rare that it will assign it the wrong place, but if it does, you can change it here at any point. So you have to have geographic roles assigned in order to be able to create maps. Now I'm going to navigate back to my blank sheet, and I'm going to drag the state province field under location to rows. And then using show me, I'm going to go ahead and select the symbol map. If you look at the requirements for symbol maps, you need 1 geographic dimension, 0 or more dimensions, and 0 to 2 measures. And so any of the fields that have the globe symbol can be used as that geographic dimension. I'm going to go ahead and collapse show me. So you'll notice a few changes. You'll notice that the columns now says longitude generated and rows says latitude generated. And so it takes that geographic dimension and it separates it into longitude and latitude. And then if you look at the marks card, something interesting happened. We used the state province field, but it also gave us the country region field. And let me explain a little bit about why that happened. If we look at location on the fields list, it's in a hierarchy. That's what the symbol in front of location represents, the icon. And in that hierarchy, you have country, region, state, province, city, and postal code. So it's given me the top layer, the upper layer of the hierarchy, the uppermost level of the hierarchy, in addition to the one that we chose. Now, we don't want country region, so we're going to click on it in the marks card and press delete on your keyboard. So that's always going to generate the highest level of a hierarchy along with anything in a sub-level, like state province. So now we're going to give our map more context, and we're going to do that by dragging sales to size on the marks card. So now you'll notice the states that had sales, the states and provinces that had sales, have circles on them representing. The largest circle would represent larger sales and the smaller circles, smaller sales. And you can hover over any of those marks to see the actual sales value there. Because we put sales as size on the marks card, we have a legend that populates on the right side. Now on the marks card, we're going to select the sales pill, and we're going to go to the automatic drop down, and you can change it to a different shape if you want it. So we could change it to a square. And then we decide, no, we want it to be a circle again. So I'm going to just go back and change it to the circle. And let's grab the state field from the field list and drag it to color on the marks card. So we have state both as detail and we have it as the color. So we get another legend on the right indicating the colors of the circles for their size by state. And we decide that we're undecided whether we want to use color for the state province. We may change our mind about it, but in the meantime, we certainly don't need its legend on the right. So we can go ahead and do the drop down arrow to the right of the legend header and choose hide card. Before we overlay demographic data on our map, let's do a couple of changes. So at this point, we've decided we don't want color assigned to the state and provinces. So in the marks card, I'm going to select the state province pill and press delete to get rid of it. And we're going to drag sales to color from the field list instead. So now we have a sum of sales color palette legend on the right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on color on the marks card and edit colors. And I am going to choose a diverging palette. So I think I'll go with the orange blue. I'll do the orange blue white diverging one. And then I'm going to do something different here with my palette. I'm going to check the box that says stepped color, and I'm going to leave it on 5 steps. So if you uncheck it, you see that it's just like blending all the colors together like that. If you do stepped color, it'll break it into 5 segments of differing colors. And I'm going to go ahead and apply and click OK. So both the size and the color of the circles on the map representing sales are based on the sales value. The other thing we're going to do here is we're going to get rid of the sum of sales size legend by clicking its drop down arrow and hiding that card. At this point, go ahead and save. We're not done with this map yet, but it's a good time to save. So now if you hover your mouse over your map, in its upper left corner, you'll see your map controls toolbar. Click on or hover over the right pointing arrow and select the 4 arrow points, and that is the pan one. So now when you put your mouse on the map and you drag it up and down, you can pan the map. So you can see that we have Canada and the United States in here, and we're seeing Mexico as well. If I keep panning, we'll see other countries. And none of those countries have any sales in them at this point, except for the United States, I believe. So that gives you the ability to pan the map. Now we're going to start overlaying demographic data. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to go to the map menu and choose background layers. And the background layers panel opens on the left. And I'm going to size it so that I can see it a little bit better. So certain background map layers are included by default. And we'll use the style and show you everything at the top, but I'm jumping right to background map layer section. And so we have the base map, we have land cover, country, region borders, country, region names, same for state, province, borders, and names. And we want to add some more layers. So what we're going to do is we're going to check the box in front of coastline. And if you keep your eye on your map and you uncheck it, you'll see that the coastlines are not defined. When you check it again, you'll see the definition for the coastlines on your map. And we're also going to put a check mark in front of water labels. Again, try to keep your eye on the map while you're doing this. But now you're actually seeing the names of the bodies of water. There's your Gulf of Mexico down there. And that's what water labels do. You can take a moment and you can check other background map layers as you like. I'm going to leave mine the way it is right now. But I want to point out another thing that you can do. if we checked coastline and water labels, if we want all of our maps to include that automatically, we can go to the very bottom of that background layers pane and choose make default. So any subsequent maps that you create will default with those background map layers already included. Now, if you look at the very bottom of your background layers tab, you'll see that they have another section down there called data layer. And we're going to explore that now. So right now it's set to no data layer, and we're going to do the drop down, and you see a bunch of the statistical information that shows up: US households, US housing, occupations, population by race. Under population, US population, we're going to just click on population. And then it shows underneath it, the detail is by state, which we want to leave it, the population by state. And it assigns it a palette. And I'm going to switch it to a different palette. And I'm going to choose orange, blue, diverging. And so now we have an additional layer showing population, and you actually get a legend over on the right showing the population values and the coloration of the states. Now there are a handful of background styles that you can include on your map, or you can switch to on your map. So it defaults to light, and you can take a look at all of them, take a few moments to look at all of them and see how they change the background of your map. So you get to see the variety of things. Streets is kind of interesting on this map, but it does show you more detail. You get some city information on there as well. Outdoors is kind of nice. And then one of my personal favorites is satellite. For some reason, I like looking at it that way. But I think I'll go with, you can choose one that suits your needs. I think I'll do the outdoors one. It's bright, it's colorful. It has some state information on it, city information in the states on it as well. And you can give your background style a washout effect, so it's not quite as bold if you want to. There's one last thing we're going to address before we move on to creating a Choropleth map. And in the lower right corner of your map, you'll see 10 unknown. And if you hover over it, it says there are 10 values that have unknown geographic locations. Let's go ahead and click on that. And there are 3 options for you. You could edit the locations, you could filter the data, which is what we're going to choose in a moment, or you can show the data at default position on the axis. So it would show null values as zeros. Let's first click on edit locations. So notice it is everything that is unrecognized is the provinces in Canada, and we don't have data that we need to really see up in Canada. So what we're going to do is click OK on that. And what we can do is close your background layers pane on the left. And you're going to drag state province to the filters shelf. And you're going to select none. And now we're going to just exclude those provinces. So we'll start from the top. We'll exclude Alberta, British Columbia, scroll down for Manitoba, New Brunswick, Newfoundland and Labrador, Nova Scotia. We're going to do Ontario, Prince Edward Island, Quebec, and Saskatchewan. And once they're selected, it's easier to select less of a list. We're going to choose the box in front of exclude, and we're going to apply and OK. So your 10 unknowns disappeared from the bottom right of your map. Go ahead and save and bring up a new sheet. And it might be a good idea for us to name the preceding sheet. Sorry about that. So the sheet with our map on it, we're going to call Sales by State. And later on, you'll learn how to give your title a different set of text as opposed to the sheet. It's just that when you name a sheet, it automatically makes that the name of the title on your visualization, but you'll learn later how to change that. So now I'm going to go to the blank sheet. Now we're ready to create our filled map or Choropleth map. So we want to, in your field list, select the country region field and hold down your control key and select state province. And then you're going to click and hold on either one of those selected and drag to detail in the marks card. Now we're going to use Show Me. And on the Show Me, notice the map that is selected has the highlight around it. That's what's recommended. That's a symbol map. That's like what we've created already. And then the one to the right of it, it just says Maps when you hover over it. And you're going to choose that. And that is your filled map. And now we're going to go back to background layers for a moment. So we're going to go Map Menu, Background Layers. And what I want to do I want to uncheck the state province names. We're going to make them show up clearer on the map. And then we can close our background layers pane. And we're going to drag the state field, the state province field, to detail on the marks card. I actually meant to say drag it to label on the marks card. So I've adjusted mine. You can just drag your repeat of state province from detail into the label box. And so they show up a little bit more clear on the map as opposed to getting it from the background. Now we want to get a count of customers for each state in our map. And in order to do that, we're going to create a calculated field, and we're going to use it to apply both color and detail to our map. So we can go up to the analysis menu, and we're going to create calculated field. Now, it would be ideal if we look over at our field list, we have customer first and customer last because we split the customer name field. And we don't have like a customer ID field, which would make each customer unique. So this is not going to be an accurate calculation, but it's the best I can come up with this data set. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to just name the calculated field customer count. And then we're going to use the distinct count function. So start typing count, and you have both count and count D. We want to select count D. So that is the distinct count. It will only count each item once, even if there is a repeat. And that's why this is not going to actually be accurate, because we don't have a customer ID column. So you need to make sure you're inside the count D parentheses, and you're going to start typing customer and choose customer last. And so if you had clicked anywhere and you were outside the parentheses, at the bottom it would say in red, the calculation is not valid. So now we're good with our calculation. We're going to click OK. And we have, under measure names in our field list, we have our customer count. And we're going to drag it to color on the marks card. And we're also going to drag it to detail on the marks card. So we have it in two places. If I hover over any state, I will see the count of customers in that state based on distinct last name. So we're excluding any customers that might have the same last name. And we get an aggregate customer count legend over on the right, and it's just doing that non-stepped coloration. So I'm going to do the drop down arrow next to that and choose edit colors, and I think I want to change it to my I'm fond of my orange blue diverging, and I'm going to use 5 steps for my color and click OK. The other thing I'm going to do is edit the legend title. Instead of ag customer count, I'm going to do the drop down arrow and choose edit title. And I'm going to just call it, as you can see, number of customers. And then just go ahead and click OK. Now, excuse me, on your marks card, drag your detail ag customer count, drag that to label. So now we're actually seeing the customer counts on our map. And so we can hide that card for a number of customers. We don't need it because we can actually see it on each state. And the other thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the label on the marks card, and where it says font, we're going to do the drop down, and you're going to change the font to, actually you can type in another number there. So we're going to type in a 7. It only goes down to 8, and press enter. So everything fits better on the map as well. So you can come out of that with and go back to label again, and this time click the ellipsis next to text, and we want to make that ag of customer count bold. So I'm going to select that and do the B for bold and click apply. So the numbers should stand out a little bit more. On the map. And I'm just zooming in. Now you can zoom by using your arrow if you have your mark set to zoom here, right? My mark is set to pan, but if I use my shift key, it will let me zoom. And I can still pan. So you have your filled map. And so we're going to name this sheet number of customers by state/province. And go ahead and save your file. So our next lesson is using Polygon Shapes in maps. Let's go ahead and bring up a new sheet. And I could make this very simple, but I'm also deciding to show you how to do groupings during this lesson. So what we're going to do is in our field list, we want to double click country region. And notice it places it in details on the marks card, and then it generated the longitude and the latitude. And this automatically creates a symbol map, right? When you do something like that, it defaults to a symbol map. So now we're going to take sales and drag it to color on the marks card. And this will automatically change it to a filled map. So the last one, when we did our Choropleth on the last sheet, we used show me to change it to a filled map. But if you drag a measure to color, it will automatically make it a filled map. If we had added a dimension to color, it would be a symbol map. So let's drag sum of sales from color to detail in the marks card. We're back to a symbol map by doing this as well. So now we want to create groups using the United States, the states in the United States. So what we're going to do in our field list, and we'll do the first one together, and then I'll have you do the subsequent groups on your own. So in our field list, we're going to right-click on State Province, and we're going to hover over Create and choose Group. So notice up at the top, it gives it a name of state, province, and then group in parentheses, and we're not going to change that. And we want to create groups that represent the regions in the United States. And so we're going to just use the 5 regions, West, Southwest, Midwest, Northeast, and Southeast. And we'll do the West region together, and it's going to have 9 states in it. I will, after we do this one together, you'll have a slide showing you the other regions that you're going to create, and you're going to create them all in this box. And actually, we'll do the first 2 together to make it a little bit easier. So we're going to start with the West. And what we want to do is we want to start selecting the states that we want in the West region. So, and I'm going from top to bottom here. We're going to select California, and I'm just holding down my control key. And we're going to select Colorado. And then we're going to go down to Idaho. And then I'm going to scroll down until I see Montana. And then we want Nevada. Scroll down some more. Oregon. We want Utah, Washington, and Wyoming. So I've been using my control key to select them, and I'll read them out again from the top. California, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Nevada, Oregon, Utah, Washington, Wyoming. So once you have those 9 selected, we're going to click the group button. And notice it puts them all in a group. It's showing California, Colorado, Idaho, and 6 more. And that's already selected. So we're going to name that West and press Enter. And then what you could do, because you're going to be creating more groups, you can collapse West. And notice all of the states that we selected for West are not in the list. They're underneath the West group. So let's do our second one together, and then you'll be able to do the other 3 on your own. So this one is going to be our Southwest group, starting from the top, Arizona. We're going to scroll down until we see New Mexico and control click it. Then we want Oklahoma and Texas. We're going to click the group button and we're going to name this Southwest. Press enter and collapse that group as well. So now I'm going to put a slide up for you so that you can create the rest of the groups on your own. Here's the slide you can reference for creating the Midwest, Northeast, and Southeast groups on your own. I've included the number of members in the group because at the end, after you select everything, it shows you the first 3 and then plus however many more. So you can double check that you have all of them that you need. And just a note at the bottom, you're not doing anything on the excluded column. It doesn't include Alaska. We're excluding District of Columbia and Hawaii on purpose there. So go ahead and create your 3 groups. And you can pause the recording to keep the slide on the screen. So now that we have our groups created, we want to put everything that we did not include into a group it will create called Other. So we're going to check the box underneath the group button that says Include Other, and it grouped all of the provinces. It also has the District of Columbia in there, and that's fine. And we're going to click OK at the bottom. So now you'll notice in your field pane that you have a state province group, and we're going to drag that to the color box on the marks card. And so if we didn't include Other, we'd have a longer legend here because it would list all of those things that we excluded with their own colors. And now we want to change the type of mark from automatic to map. So the colors will fill the map based on the regions. Now, a couple of other things that we want to do. Let's go over to our legend on the right and do the drop down and choose Edit Colors. I'm going to choose a different palette. I think I'm going to go with the orange gold palette this time. No, I won't do that one. I'll do the summer palette. Can't seem to make up my mind here. So I'll figure out what palette I want while you figure out which palette you want to use. So my mind is made up and I assigned the colors that I wanted to the data item. And I'm going to go ahead and click Apply and then OK. And I'm going to drag state province, not the group, but state province from the field list to label so that they show up better on the map. And then I'm going to go to label and adjust the font to 7-point like we did previously so it fits better. Now, if we'd wanted, we could have put the regions in text, but since we already have the legend on the right side, that's not necessary. It's better to have the states in there as the label so you can see them clearly on the map. Now, the only thing that we need to do is to change that state province group or state province. We can change the shape of it to polygon. So we'll do the groups. So I'm going to click on state province group. We changed it to map. Go back to your marks drop down and choose polygon, which is a really different way of looking at everything. So that would be an example of using polygons on maps. You can hover over each part of the polygons and see the same data as you did before. So let's go ahead and save this sheet. And we'll call it sales by region, just to keep it simple. Our last lesson in this module is more on customizing maps. So what we're going to do for this one, let's go ahead and drag our state province group to the filter shelf. And then we'll leave it. We'll just click OK at the bottom. And then we're going to right click on that filter and choose Show Filter. So this way we have the state province filter at the top. So if an end user, I'm going to uncheck all there and the map disappears. If the end user just wants to see the West, they can do it like that. And I'm going to recheck all. And now let's go back to our map menu so we can get back to our background layers. And let's change the style for this one to normal. And then under background map layers, let's choose cities. We're going to check cities. And we can close that pane now. And actually, I'm going to collapse this down a little bit. I want more room for my map. So as you zoom in on the map, you'll start seeing the cities in every state. Go ahead and save your file. We started Module 5 by reviewing the geographic roles from the metadata grid in Data Source View. And we didn't have to change or create any, but you know where to go if it's necessary for you to do so. And then we started placing marks on a map by using Show Me to create our first map, a symbol map. You learned a little bit about the hierarchy for location, and you also learned how to delete a pill. We use sales values as the size of the circles on the map, and we use state as coloration on the map. You also learned how to hide a card during that lesson. We moved on to overlaying demographic data. So you learned how to add background layers to a map and to save them as a default for all future maps that you might create in the workbook. You learned how to address the address unknown flag in the bottom right of the map. We did that by filtering. We also were able to show the population at the state level on that map by adding a data layer to it. You learned how to select a palette, a diverging palette, and we changed the background style of the map. My favorite is satellite, but I went with outdoors on that one. And then we got rid of, I already discussed that. We got rid of those address unknowns by filtering. We moved on to creating a Choropleth map, which is a filled map. Sorry about that slide there. And we could do it a couple of different ways. It depends on where you put the measures in the map, whether it's going to be symbol or filled, or you can use Show Me for that as well. So we got rid of some background data layers. And you learned how to, even though the states show up on the map, they're kind of dimmed out. So what we did is we added state to label and changed the size of the label to make it more readable. We created another calculated field here, which was not accurate, but it served our purpose, where we did a distinct count on the customer last name. And we used that calculated field to provide color and detail to the filled map. So in the next one, lesson 5, using Polygon Shapes, I took you the long way around. I gave you some opportunity to learn how to create groups and how to use them. And we used those groupings as coloration on our map. And we also then changed the shape on the marks card for polygon. So each point is pointing to a bit of data. Lastly, we ended up doing some more map customization, which we did throughout. In this extensive course, we started by connecting to a variety of data sources, in particular text, Excel, and Access database data sources. We did more charts, this time Bivariate Charts. So we created a bivariate table, and you learned that tables are good as companion visualizations instead of main visualizations. They can give more detail to another visualization. We created scatter plots. You learned how to swap rows and columns and add trend lines, and how to select and apply color palettes. And we started using dates as well. And you learned how to change the date from year to quarter or month or week or day, so on and so forth. The next module is where we created multivariate charts. So we created facets, which are also known as small multiples, area charts, which are like filled in line charts. We created bullet graphs, dual axes charts, and you learned along the way 2 different ways to create those. We created Gantt charts, and we also created a heat map. We started creating maps. So you learned about how to set geographic roles from the data source view, and we reviewed them in the metadata grid. We placed marks on a map, and then we got to overlay some demographic data from background layers. So we added coastline and water labels, and we were able to do that very easily. We also added another background layer showing the population, the US population from 2018. We moved on to creating Choropleth maps, which are filled maps, and we created one also using Polygon Shapes, and we spent some time customizing maps.